Let's talk a little bit about system thinking. And I would like to start with the STAR model that was invented by Jay Galbraith in, I believe, the 90s. He was a management consultant, and he came to the conclusion that an organization consists of a few elements, and let's just go through them. So every company should have a strategy, right? Hopefully, every company has one. And based on the strategy, to fulfill the strategy, to work towards the strategy, we need the people. Well, we just don't loosely put the people into a company, because it will create some chaos, right? So we need at least some structure. So at least a minimum amount of structure is needed. But to the structure, we need also processes, and we also need rewards. So Jay Galbraith came up with this STAR model, and in his observation, he observed that those elements are interconnected with each other. So if you turn one knob over here, everything changes, right? They get disaligned or aligned. And one of his learnings was that this system, let's say, the degree of how well those elements are aligned between each other determines the behavior in the organization. And the behavior also is the performance. And what is behavior? Behavior is something that we can observe. If we walk into a company, we can just come in, right? And we can observe how people behave, how people talk to each other, and so on and so on. This is something observable. If you record it on video, you can be able to see the behavior. And to me, behavior is nothing else than the manifestation of the company's culture. So we can see the company's culture by observing the people, right? So unless the STAR model elements are part of the organizational design, also known as the organizational structure. So unless we consider organizational structure, all of this is organizational structure. And since the organizational structure determines the behavior, and behavior is the manifestation of the culture, we can say culture follows structure. By aligning these elements according to the strategy or our optimizing goal that we want, we can create the culture that we want or seek in the respective organization. And before we continue, I would like to quote Rasulakov, that over 90% of the problems that arise in a corporation are better solved somewhere other than where they appear. Right? Somewhere other than where they appear. That requires system thinking. So if we have problems somewhere here, over here, usually with like progress towards our structure, right? And we should have a look over here. And connecting to the STAR model, which elements are usually changed when introducing Scrum? And any ideas? Just say out loud. Which elements are changed? Structure? How? So teams are created, right? And then maybe. So in some companies who introduce Scrum, they definitely create the Scrum events. If we're lucky, we create the teams. But then everything else stays. So we just created a disaligned system, which creates pain for everyone in this company. So let's talk about the journey towards feature teams. And you probably, or hopefully, you have seen this picture where we have one product owner, we have one product backlog, we have all the teams who are working all together on the product, delivering one product together. So, and this requires two journeys, and this slide, or the pictures I copied from Buzz. So we need two journeys, being told how to work towards self-managing teams and from programmer towards a product developer. And right now in this talk, we will focus more on this, on the first journey from being told how to work towards self-managing teams. So let's look at the idea of, or the effects of structuring the organization based on component teams. And here we have a product architecture, let's say. So we have 9 components, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. We have those components. If you organize your company based on component teams, you will assign people to a component that they will work. These people will work only on this component. These people work only on this component. So here we have another view of the same, right? So we have team A, which works only on component A, team B, which works only on component B, and so on. And now we have a feature request F1. Which team is going to do the requirements clarification with the user or the customer? So obviously, they don't know yet which team is going to do it, right? So we need a special team for that. And it's going to be a business analyst team or requirements engineers team. They go by different names in different companies. And what they do, they talk to the actual customer or whoever comes with the requirement. They clarify it, and they create a requirements document. Well, at this stage, we still don't know which components need to be checked and changed in order to deliver F1. So we need an architect's team, usually, who takes this requirement, and it goes into their backlog. They take this requirement, and they analyze it, and they create some sort of a matrix that for this requirement, we need to change these components, and they create component requirements, which are technical and not end-to-end anymore. And this goes into some list. And this is F1, and we have here some blocks, and each block has a component requirement for each component. Who manages this list? We have obviously a project manager. Well, but since team A now can only work on A, it's somehow something missing here. There's a link missing. So what happens? We have a team backlogs, and all the A's come here, or the B's come here, or all the C's come here. And who manages these? Who coordinates these backlogs? That will be a sub-project manager or different roles, team level, product owner, and other different roles in different companies. Well, now the component requirement arrived at this level, teams start working, and they create lots of code. Who is going to integrate it? We need an integration team, a release management team, integration team. They go by different names, right? They take all of this that the teams created, they start to integrate it, and it explodes. We need to fix this, but how? Maybe you've heard this term. I definitely have in different companies. No ticket, no work. So they need to create very often a Jira ticket that describes, hey, we found an integration issue in your component, can you fix it? And then it goes either, if they know where the source of this issue is, it goes directly to the team. If not, it goes to the architects. They have to figure out, change maybe something in the architecture, and it goes in very long cycles. Well, at some point, they manage to integrate it, and there is something integratable already. What happens after? We need to test it against the actual customer requirement. And who does it? We have another special team, QA, testers. They go by different names. Now, They test it against the requirements and they find out it's completely something else, right? So they say, hey guys, business analysts, please check. There is something not matching with the requirements. Either the requirement is wrong or the product is wrong. Please figure it out and then push all the changes through this entire chain of work. I deliberately left out some teams that might exist in other companies, like, oh, it's very bad to see here, it's deployment or delivery team, and ops and maintenance teams, right? The picture can get more complicated and more complex. In some companies, there is a team sitting here in between, which is deliberately trained to get a bug ticket and make a best guess whom to assign to. There are different stages of that. So this was release 1. Now we come to release 2. In release 2, we suddenly need component D and E. And we need to also say that in these kind of organizations, there will be a manager attached to each component team. Now, you can see over here, I added the team G. They were not part of release 1, and they're also not part of release 2. There is nothing that they need to change. What have they been working on all this time? I mean, there is a manager attached to it, right? They need to appear busy. Otherwise, why have this team? And it will probably be important for the manager to keep the team so that they can proceed in their career. So this team will come up with usually speculative work, very technical, that they will put into the backlog. So they will generate speculative and often useless work, and they will bring it into this list. And since this person doesn't really understand what they are talking about, they will be able to make an impression that it's very important. We will need it at some point in the future, and they will start working on it. And now, all of these teams who have not been part of release 1 have been doing this, and their backlogs are full. Now, Team D says, oh, hold on. To deliver F2, look at our backlog, it's full. We need more people. Will the people come from here? Well, no, they will not, because they will say, it's just, we cannot just borrow people from you, because it will take me 3 months to onboard them, and then I will need to give them back to you. So it's not a good business model for me. We need to hire new people. So they hire new people. And of course, since they are permanent, it benefits this person in their career to get promoted to a higher level manager. And what we see here is, hopefully it's visually clear, that we see some sort of a V model. And we see phases, like analysis phase in here, design phase, implementation phase, and a test phase. And this is nothing else. It is a sequential life cycle. Let's look at resource and flow efficiency, and where do we find components into it. So first of all, let me introduce you to a two-dimensional diagram. We have resource efficiency, and we have the flow efficiency. And this is something I found in Cesario's and Ilya's book, Creating Agile Organizations. I find it quite useful. So resource efficiency is, we call it efficient islands here. And this is where everybody is busy doing the work, but we actually have no progress in whatever we are doing. There is no flow. In contrast to this, we have a really good flow, but maybe not everyone is busy. So we have some flow. And like in the talk before, just having flow is not good enough, because you can be really fast doing the wrong thing. Then this is the wasteland. This is definitely something where we don't want to be, and where we would like to be is the high ability to adapt, right? Where we have the flow efficiency high and the resource efficiency at some, let's say, healthy level. And, and where do we find component teams? Component teams are here, right? They are doing their best, being busy, but the flow is really slow, like we've seen in the previous slides. So just to give you a summary, like this is how it looked like with component teams. If you decide to base your organization on component teams. So let's look at how it will look like with a feature team approach. So we have, again, the same architecture. We have F1, F2, and now we have teams that are cross-functional and cross-component, and they can work across the entire stack. And they also integrate. So as soon as a requirement comes in, the product owner connects the teams with the customer and user who can donate the requirement and clarify open questions. They do requirement analysis themselves, and then they also implement, integrate, and test against the requirement. That would be the implication of feature teams, right? So they take the work, and they also coordinate between each other themselves. And at the end, they deliver a product. So the key elements of a feature team are that the feature team is cross-functional, meaning all the single function roles like or capabilities, or like a tester, an analyst, a coder, and so on, are in that team. So if I observe companies, this part is mostly understood. Cross-functional is mostly understood. What is very often not even mentioned or forgotten is the cross-component, that the teams must have the capability to work across the components. And the third one is multi-skilled team members. So we need to have the team members who have multiple skills rather than just one. So right, we need broad instead of narrow single specialists. Yeah. So where do we find feature teams in here? We would locate them here. We would find them here. But let's look at how, before we go into how the journey actually looks like, I would like to talk about this, the authority matrix. This is something that Richard Hackman described in his book, Leading Teams. And this is the definition where, that's the only definition that I know that focuses on self-managing teams. And why am I showing this? It's because in most organizations that I go into, there is never clarity about what self-management means. And it's just usually the people just say, oh, we want self-managing, self-organizing, empowered teams, whatever word they use that goes into that direction. The teams assume they are here, that they can set their direction themselves, and the management thinks, oh, now we said to them they need to be self-managing, self-organized, and empowered, and whatnot else. Well, we kind of see they are working into the wrong direction, but if we now intervene, it will be like a fireback, because we just told them they should be self-managing. So first of all, there is a communication issue in this company, right? Because what they actually wanted is this. The teams think they're here, and the management is afraid to address this issue. If this goes on too long, then it will create, obviously, a lot of pain in the company and will be difficult to rectify and painful to rectify. Now I would like to look with you through the different that you can, or paths that you can take from component teams to feature teams. So if your organization is somewhere here, then the usual path would be like this. First, you move to the efficient islands, and then you move up to the towards feature teams. And it requires different things that you need to change in the organization. But if your organization is here, then first we do this, and then we go up. And this is obviously a very simplistic picture, and it really highly depends on your on every organization's individual context. So where you are in this graph and where you want to go. And the path might be very, very different. But that's the usual path. And let's talk about the common changes. The common changes that companies do on the way to feature teams. So a likely traditional large-scale organizational structure before they go towards adaptive, and they have like single function teams and also component teams. So since we need everything of that in a feature team, we need to dissolve those teams and create new teams. And this change is a huge change for most companies, and I fully respect that they go that they make this. They have my highest respect that they do these kinds of changes. And what they end up with is something like this. Different teams, and I call this feature team version 0.1. Please remember the name, version 0.1. We will come back to this. And what do we have here? We have here people with the different roles. So what they do, they create cross-functional, they motivate them to go cross-component, but they leave the single-function roles in place. And what changed? They created teams, events are introduced, everything else is still the same. Let's look at the sprint planning of such team. How does that look like? What happens in this sprint planning? And you might relate. So the sprint planning of our new team, and for simplification's reason, I now have just 4 team members. We have an analyst, we have a tester, we have a front-end developer, and we have a back-end developer. So we have our list, our backlog with the priorities and the product owner, and now we have the sprint backlog of that team. So that team pulled 2 items, the first 2 items, into their backlog, and they're starting to plan. And the plan is the 2 developers talk to each other and they say, hey, the front-end developer says to the back-end developer, let's do it the following way. I will do my front-end tasks first. When I'm done, you will do the back-end tasks first. And when we are both done, the tester will do the tests. The back-end developer says, yes, great. On the prior 2 item, let's reverse that. I will do the back-end tasks first, you will do the front-end tasks later, and the tester will test later. Great. What does the tester do? So if we have this as a time axis, what does the tester do during this time here? Sorry? No. Refining, that would be already good if they would be refining tests. You all know it. They work on the spillover item from the last sprint because they have not been working together. The work in progress was high, and when this person started testing in the previous sprint, they discovered, oh, things are going wrong. You guys implemented the wrong stuff. You need to redo. And since this happened already in the previous sprint, they didn't finish it, and it continues over here. Okay, so now this person is testing stuff from the previous sprint. So we got spillovers. What does the analyst do? The analyst wants to be busy and works on the prior 101, refining the next thing, because it might be useful in the future. What did we achieve? A sequential life cycle within a team. We achieved a sequential life cycle within a team. So where do we find the feature team version 0.1 in this chart? I would say somewhere here. Somewhere here, more in the wasteland. So, and then we ask, why do we have narrow specialist roles? Well, because it's more efficient. They do the front-end developer does front-end development best, and so on. Back-end developer does the back-end development best, and so on. They are very busy. And this problem, the problem that I just showed in the sprint planning example, can be worse or less worse, depending on how the team is actually structured. Does the team have just one manager, or does every role have a different manager? Then the degree of this problem also is different. So let's look at a way forward, how to move forward from this. So now let's look at the teams again. So we need cross-functional, cross-component, multi-skilled team member roles. And no specialized roles in teams, one broad team member role. And what you can see here, if this yellowish is the role, the broad role, then the outer line would be the skill. What I would like to point out is that the wrong misunderstanding, that always when I say one broad team member role, people start thinking that, oh, everyone needs to be able to do everything. That's not the case. They still have their skills, and this picture right now that we are seeing over here just shows the beginning state of their skills. When you change the roles to a broader role, it also enables them to cross-learn, and hopefully, over some period of time, the colors will start to mix. But they will never be able to, that everyone in this team will be able to do everything equally good. Right? They will still have their primary specialities and so on. So, yeah, and it is difficult to get a man to understand something when his or her job depends on not understanding it, right? So therefore, if we want real cross-functionality in a team, the team working as a team, we need to remove that role. And let's talk about here a little bit about generalization and specialization. And if we have someone with just a single skill novice, then this person would have a lower value in the company at that moment. If we have a single skill deep specialist, they would have an average value. And if we have a multi-skilled generalist, we'll also, so someone who is multi-skilled but doesn't have anything that goes into a deeper specialization, that will also have an average value. The most highest value would be multi-skilled specialist, someone who has multiple skills that go deep. Maybe not equally deep, but deep. First, second, third, fourth specialization. And how can you distribute the salary in here? So if you take the same diagram and place it in here, then generalization, specialization would be something like this. And this leads us to the next changes that we can make in the context of the star model. So let's connect it to the star model. What needs changing to enable real feature teams to move away from version 0.1 to the next stage? We need to broaden job and role descriptions. We need to adjust the reward system, and we need definitely to create end-to-end customer-centric items if it's not done yet. We need to educate people about all of this, and we need to help them learn the broader skills. And very important, often forgotten, adjust your hiring network. What kind of people does your company attract? Does it attract single specialist roles, or does it attract multi-skilled specialists? So, if we change all of these blue things now, if we implement it in our company, and let's call this the feature team 0.x, where do we land? We land somewhere over here in the flow. Now we've created flow, and we want to move up. Let's look at this. So more ways towards feature teams. How can we make this move to move up? And it's technical excellence. And what do I mean by that? We need to enable people to concurrently work on the same code. Like at the same time, at the same code, concurrently solve customer problems. We need to change, and in order to do that, again, there is education in that, and there is structural changes in the technical stack that need to be done in order to enable this. So if we connect it, again, to our star model, what do we need to change in here? We need to improve technical excellence in the people, so that's, again, more education. We need, in terms of processes and policies, we need to establish an open source within the company, internal open source, I think is the right term for it. That means we need to enable people to work across, that's the first step, to enable people to work across the entire stack. Because usually, when you have component teams, there will be some policies that this team can work on component that, but if you want a change in this team, you need to make a Jira ticket to this team so that they do some change in that particular code. So we need to break that. And we need to reduce complexity in the technical stack, that it actually becomes workable and manageable on this level. So to summarize, narrow single specialist roles in teams lead to sequential lifecycle within teams. Establish broad, multi-skilled roles and align reward systems to move towards flow efficiency first. Second, or the third in this case, increase technical excellence to move towards real adaptability with feature teams. Easy, three-step approach. Good. Recommendations. Look for root causes somewhere else than where problem symptoms appear. Always consider the entire system and identify to-dos in all elements of the star model. Otherwise, it will be disbalanced and it will create pain. Use different maps to determine your current state and where you need to go. Resource versus flow efficiency, specialization versus generalization, and feature team adoption map, and so on. And regarding feature team adoption map, Mark is over there. Mark, can you say hi? We worked together somehow on these, and Mark will talk later today at 4:45 about step-by-step approach towards feature teams using the feature team adoption map. So he will go even into more detail about, about these kind of things. Here. He will go into much more detail about that and how it might look like depending on your current organizational structure. So if you find this talk interesting, I highly recommend to join Mark later today to get even deeper into this. So, what's next? If you found it useful and interesting, please contact me, connect with me to get even into more detail. Questions? Who wants to go first? Questions? Right. Over there, okay.
Yeah, so we have a couple of questions. The first one would be in the sense, in your experience with this setup, what kind of resistance have you faced in the past, and how usually you overcome this in big organizations or when you're working on the structure in this sense for the features?
What kind of resistance I faced? Yeah, significant would be the right word, but it depends on how you approach this, right? There will be always people who will love it. There will be always people who will hate it, and you need to deal with this in your context of the organization very individually. But one of the most important things would be to involve people in that, in this whole discussion and the change, so that they own it. Otherwise, it just simply won't fly. If all of the decisions are made and distributed top-down, then it will be just another thing management wants.
We still have a couple of questions here.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so another question to you about your experience, but how were you able to convince C-level to look at the organization as a whole, like whole 5 stars, where you can actually, if you want to fix something in one component or in one area of that star, you have to actually tweak other levels or tweak other components there so that the whole thing works. Yeah. It's not just about process, it's not just about rewarding system, because if you want to tweak everything, every other element or every other functions that is taking care of that element will feel threatened. Oh, you're bringing change now, we're not going to do that. But how were you able to convince C-level to look at it as a whole? That whatever you bring a change in one component, you're actually changing everything else.
You mean the star model element when you say component?
Yeah, the component is elements of the stars, basically.
Yeah. So one pattern that seems useful and really to work is if you are an internal and trying to make this change or convince management as an internal employee, this will likely fail because you are never a prophet in your own land. And it usually works if you pair up with an external consultant and they complement each other in that change. It's never let's have a 1-hour conversation, it's a journey. And another thing that I do is I have a workshop on exactly the star elements and what needs to be changing to align it with the strategy.
Perfect, thank you.
There was another question, I think over there. Yeah.
Hi, and I want to ask a little bit more into the, involving the teams or the staff in the change. What, in your experience, has worked? Something that is more specific?
What worked in my experience on how to involve the teams in the change?
Yes, correct.
In
the specifics, yeah.
I split it into also different phases. If you are just at an initiate stage of such a change, it works to create, to have a group of people that is cross-hierarchy, across all hierarchy levels, who works together on the change so that all perspectives from all hierarchy levels are considered. But then when you start rolling it out, we have something really nice in less, which is the overall retrospective, which is exactly for these kind of things, where management and the teams participate together with the product owners to look at the entire system and change the entire system.
So your positioning is on the overburdening or lessen the overburden?
Can you say again a bit louder?
So the positioning that you are taking in involving is going from the angle of lessening the overburden?
It's let me just repeat if I understood it correctly. If my positioning is on rolling out less,
No.
No.
No, no. So with your response, the response that you have just given,
yeah,
how you incentivize or get people on the wagon is to look at where are the areas of challenges. And your example sounds like
Yep.
if I am overloaded, if we see that people are overloaded, then that's the angle and the position that you will use for that change conversation.
So senior management support is in this very important. So there needs to be, when I say at the initiate phase, everyone cross hierarchy, there still needs to be an optimization goal or some guidance set in terms of which direction do we want to go in overall, right? And if this is set, then obviously with the authority of senior management, we can also start approaching the other elements in the STAR model, like reward systems.
Yeah, okay, so on the reward system, other than monetary, what have you found to be helpful? So that's one. Two is in moving from specialists to multi-skilled specialists, often that identity, me being an expert in one area and I am the go-to person, becomes a core identity. So how has that impacted the journey that you have experienced going with the teams?
Yeah, so if I would address the second question right now. That is an issue, and people believe that it's an issue at first. And some people will never let go of that belief. But most people, when they start learning other skills and they actually see that they can that they can solve a customer problem and make a customer happy, so instead of making a cup, I can deliver some drink to the customer, including the cup, and not just a drink, but the drink that the customer wanted. Just solving that customer problem makes them more happy than having a single specialist, single specialization. The first question I did not understand, sorry.
So with incentivizing, other than saying that, you get recognized, your pay package goes up or things like that, because those are not intrinsic motivators, what have you found effective that is more intrinsic or tap on
more intrinsic, solving a customer problem is the intrinsic, because the people can see the effect. So they can see that whatever they do matters to the end customer. Okay, other questions?
I have a question that actually bases on that. What if there is no end customer? Because like in my case, in my company, we're building like multi-layer, let's say, product, which consists of software, firmware, and hardware, which is like some of the firmware people, they do not have the end customer they serve, actually, and they cannot relate to that.
So you're building a bigger component?
We're actually building like our whole hardware products with software and stuff. So it is like a box, let's say.
And you give it to?
We give it to end customers, but the journey from like building one part of it to like actually delivering is like this is a journey. This is not trouble. This is a journey. So they cannot like directly relate.
You must have some your core users or something of this. So.
Yeah, but you know, this is like so far away in like a mental approach that they just do not relate to that at all.
Maybe you should bring your teams to where this product is used, that they can experience it.
Oh, there's a different challenge with the company, so.
Sorry?
This is a different challenge with like, you know,
yeah, but if you want them to care, they need to see how the work they do affects people.
I have a question regarding the rewards.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is the best way to define that person learned a new skill and we need to pay more salary, maybe some more rewards for him? How to define?
There is no silver bullet. It highly depends on the company's current structure and culture. Highly depends on that. I've seen so many different things. Some things I would never do, but it still works for that company, which I would consider very, very dysfunctional in another company. So there is no silver bullet. You need to figure this out in the context of your organization.
So it might be some 360 managers evaluation.
Yeah, that's the usual things. Yeah, but I wouldn't go that deep. Figure it out. Talk to the people who actually are affected and who set the rules.
Okay, thank you.
Bring them together.
Something that we discussed on the table is there are a lot of companies where you have these programmers that have worked there for 30 years and they basically own entire components and they have the power with that. How do you get the buy-in from such people to be on board with moving to feature teams, considering that with that they're going to lose the power and they're going to resist as much as possible that?
Involve them in the change. So nowadays I would look for the people who would resist the change most, especially the initiation phase, and not just those who resist most, but also the ones who are not afraid to speak up. And I would involve them in the initial change setup. Because those people usually have a perspective that no one else has, but it's crucial for the entire success of the change. When you consider their perspective and you find a solution together, then it's a win-win situation. But if you consider and find a solution for them and they still are not convinced, then, well, you need to find other solutions for that in this context.
And just another one, I'm interested, I've seen organizations that don't really have the buy-in from management to do that change from component to feature teams. And I've heard some of them throwing out the idea of, pitching the idea of running a parallel organization so that management can see what component team delivery and feature team delivery means. What's your view on that? Like, kind of like running two parts of the organization in a different way so that management can assess?
If it's possible, great. In most organizations, that's not possible. You need in most organizations, you will go into an incremental change.
And that would be a better option if it's possible, I guess.
I'm not sure if I wouldn't say better or worse. I wouldn't like to use those words. It's in their context. You need always to consider their context. There is no silver bullet. Okay. No, there is more question.
How do you...
hold on.
How do you educate, skill specialists to become more, multi-skill?
Yeah. So the
the back end to be
yeah, that's a good question. How do I educate people to at least consider multi-skilled? There's one thing I like to do is in companies, especially when there is something like front-end, back-end, this kind of a setup in a team, I usually play a game with them. I play a game. The game is fun, and the game is a mob programming game, where the analyst has to write some code, right? Where the front-end developer has to write some back-end code, the back-end developer has to write some front-end code with the help of the actual expert. And the game is usually just 90 minutes. But the effect of those 90 minutes is that they realize, oh, I actually can do many things. Like 80% of the work I can do with the knowledge I have. I don't need all the time everyone, the single specialist for this, but for the 20% of the work where it gets harder, I need their advice. And just by playing this game, I've seen very often a shift towards let's try this out actually on a daily basis with our current product. That's one way. The other way is talking to people and trying out.
Do you use a certain game for that we might know, or do you
if you Google on YouTube mob programming RPG role-play game, mob programming role-play game, there are a few videos about, and I do exactly what's in those videos.
Thanks.
Hi. Yeah, I was curious about maybe one of your success stories where you've gone from team 0.1 to 0.x and the time frame of that change. I understand you're always evolving and there's always things to do better, but yeah.
Yep. Working full-time with a team like this and the organization, in the best case, I've seen 3 months. In a worst case, years to get there. Yeah. So if that answers your question.
Last one, I guess.
Just the last one. Would you give up at some point if like the organization doesn't want to change and doesn't want to if it stretches for years? Is there a point where you just say, I give up, it's not going to work?
If we cannot create a win-win situation, that is the point where I would say, okay, that's where our ways diverge. Okay, thank you.